Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of HETMA Presents. Today, HETMA presents The Road to 10K and This Week in Higher Ed AV. We have a special hybrid episode for you being recorded live as the keynote session on day 3, Friday, of the HETMA virtual conference. And so we are charting new territory and charting new ground. Let me be clear on something. Just because we're recording live, we are not open to heckles, live criticisms, or anything else. We have been spotlighted, which means we are the panel and we are the experts. And for this point in time, only the following people's opinions matter. So before we get started, let me introduce or have our panel introduce themselves for you today. So among many other accolades, Britt Yenser is the 3-year at-large board member of HETMA, AV Pro of the Year, former Prism Scholar. I couldn't even mention all of the things. Britt, please introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Britt Yenser, CTS. I'm the audiovisual manager at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Cool. And thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today. Miss Gina Sansevero, again, I could probably name a number of things, including a board of ETC, but above all else, she is a Mets fan, which makes her one of the highest quality individuals that anyone could have. So Gina, welcome. Who are you and what do you do?
Thank you for having me. I'm Gina Sansevero. I'm Vice President of Marketing at Atlas IED. And I am just one of the most depressed sports fans that you'll ever meet. I'm a Mets fan, but I'm also a Jets fan. So I'm this close to being a Bills fan, though. There might be a change for me in the future.
Yeah, Mets Jets is a tough pairing to go with. I feel like it builds resilience in an individual that you can use in a lot of contexts there.
For sure.
And finally, Mr. Tim Van Wart of Rutgers and of AV Life fame that we were just talking about. Sir, who are you? What do you do? And thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me here, Ryan. Tim Van Wert from Rutgers University Newark campus, instructional technology specialist with them, also the programs chair for HETMA. And as you also alluded to, I am the host of the AV Life podcast, where I've been running that for, it's been like 6 years now. Wow. And also a Yankees fan. So I'm sorry, my lineage is a little less aggravated.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. If we could remove his spotlight now, please, that would be much appreciated, as Tim will no longer be needed on this show. Okay, so on the HETMA Presents channel, there are a couple of monthly shows that go out, and one of them is called Road to 10K, where a panel discusses that month's theme for HETMA, and we are rolling towards the back half of the Road to 10K theme set, which is cool. And one of the other ones is This Month in Higher Ed AV, where a panel grabs some news stories or developments in our world over the past month and dissects them. So we're going to try to cram both of those into 1 hour for you today. So and I just kicked something out from under my desk. So if I disappear, you know what I'm saying? That's a pro move. So to get started, this month's theme in the HETMA community, it was time to level up. The virtual conference means upskilling, sharing with peers, and learning new insights. Tackle a challenge outside of your comfort zone. And I love that because this is our hallmark event of every year, we built the theme around it. So again, jump in anytime you want. If nobody jumps in, I will start calling on people like a 4th grade teacher, because that's what I love to do. But starting in more of a personal space, what is a skill that any one of you would say you have leveled up in the last 12 months? And I love to ask a double barrel question. So it's also, what is a turning point? How did you know that you'd actually made a leap or you'd actually made a skill improvement?
Well, I'll jump right back into this because I know what it is for me. So in the last year, I took on the new role at Rutgers Newark, moving from the big campus down in New Brunswick to a smaller, more intimate community at Rutgers Newark. And I've had to level up not only my organizational skills, but my leadership skills as well. I've become more of a mentor to 2 younger AV professionals, and I've had to step that game up. They're eager, they're willing. I've been able to bridge that gap with them. It's there's a 15-year difference between me and them. I mean, not that that really matters, but it's the first time I've been in that position, where aside from student workers, but you know, it's a different relationship with full timers than it is with a student worker. Because your student worker, you're trying to manage in one way. Full time, you're working, together regularly. So I've had to really level up that piece, and also from a technical piece, I've had to level up my networking knowledge because I don't have my network admin like I used to have. I miss him. If there's one technical person I miss now in my new role, it's my network admin. So yeah, and like it dawned on me about 6 months ago. It was about halfway through. And I kind of went, oh, wow. Like, yeah, I've had to be that role. And I've had to like discuss that, like, and like really like kind of be more aware of it. It's like, I'm not just, Goofy Tim making sure everything gets done and like, running projects and all that stuff. Is like, yeah, now I'm the guy.
Yeah. So it sounds like in that way, you sort of leveled up by basically taking on the role, jumping in and just doing it, right?
Yeah.
And one day figuring out like, oh, I've developed a new skill, or I've developed something the old-fashioned way, right? By just jumping in the pool rather than specifically sitting down for a class on human leadership.
Right.
Cool. All right. Who else?
I would say in the past 12 months, I've upskilled in my ability to create designs for classrooms. And like I think the hidden skill behind that is increased patience, because sometimes I would get frustrated or just want the task to be done because it's not my favorite or the most interesting task to me. So learning to carve out the time and dedicate it to this one thing allowed me to kind of upskill over time, because it's like, this is just what I'm focusing on. Give myself an hour to do this. And if that's just my focus for this hour, I can get better and better at it. And I knew that I was improving at it when I was able to explain what I was doing to other people.
Nice. And is that something that, like, when you talk about upskilling in that, the same thing, something that you were familiar with doing the technical part of it, but what you've had to change is the priority in saying, this is now a main part of my job and you have to carve out time. That's kind of the upskill you're talking about, is almost more time management than a technical knowledge.
Yeah, that's true. And the technical knowledge obviously grows the more you do something too. So the more I'm dedicating specific time to have this be my sole focus, the more I'm allowing myself to learn about particular products, how they work together, and how I want to use them.
Yeah, it's a fun thing, a fellow community college person over there, where sometimes we visit with people and they're like, this is the designer and this is the programmer and these are the installers. And our teams a lot is, well, I have to do all of those things. So figuring out how to be good at all of them and dedicating the right time is interesting. Yeah. All right, Gina.
So, one of the things that I realized as a leader this year is that my definition of leading might have been skewed. So, I thought part of leading, was fixing, right? And sometimes I have to take a step back and say, no, it's not your role to fix this. It's your role to facilitate. And so over time, I've realized that, especially with my team, as there's always, tensions that come up or differences of opinions, instead of jumping in and saying, okay, you get 50% and you get 50%, and that's how we're going to fix this. I am kind of asking them guiding questions so that they're learning how to fix by themselves and they're not relying on a mediator to help fix it. Ultimately, they're realizing that you have to understand somebody else's perspective. You have to prioritize based on X, Y, and Z. So really learning that leading isn't necessarily fixing, but allowing people to possibly sit in an uncomfortable situation and guide them towards learning what fixing it looks like themselves.
I love that answer. That's a tough one. In fact, I could probably go back in a text string that I'd sent to Britt earlier this year on something, which is I am learning to sit across from other people's discomfort and not
Yeah.
do that. So let me ask you a follow up, and not because it is at all personal, and I could apply this to a thing. If you have, somebody on your team that, is in those things, but they really thrive on kind of declarative answers. When they have assurance, they know how to run, but you'd like them to be able to develop the ability to solve more and look for. How have you dealt with that as those situations have come up?
Really, really good question. I know that one of the guys on my team likes perfection, always strives for perfection, doesn't let something go until it's perfect, and so never lets something go, right? And so my mantra to him for the past 2 months have been, is it 80%? Is it 80%? Because if it's 80%, we can learn to live with that. We can learn to build on it. We can learn to make it perfect. But without releasing it at 80%, we don't know what the 20% should be. We don't know what direction we should go in. So learning how to identify that we're 80% of the way there, and I'm going to learn from my 20% rather than I'm going to wait until we're at 99% and then we're missing deadlines. We're not learning from what we're doing. We're kind of forcing a round peg into a square hole or whatever that might be, right? So are we at 80%? Can we learn from 20%?
Yeah. That concept that, yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, like perfection is in the eye of the beholder. So your 100% is probably not the objective 100%. And yeah, that's a really interesting take on that. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you. All right. That's good. All right. Here's, and again, not that I have question. All right. Behind the scenes, lots of times I write questions because I am trying to figure something out. And then when I get a captive audience, I go, maybe if I'm dealing with it, other people are dealing with it too. But we live in a world where technology changes fast, information changes fast. There's always something new, and we have access to more information than you want. You can go on ChatGPT right now and have it tutor you to be a particle physicist or a plumber or anything, right? How do you, if you're looking at, things that you need to learn, things that you need to be familiar with, things you need to keep up on, how do you tell, or how do you kind of each personally decide what's worth really learning deeply versus what you just need to be competent at? How to apply the time we do have to level up in a way that's actually beneficial? Because yeah, I can get stuck in that either. Am I going to, what's the saying, right? The jack of all trades, master of none, versus what do I really need to dive into? So yeah, go around the horn. Why don't we go, if we're going the opposite direction on this one, we'll start with Gina and go back the other way.
sure. So I think the answer to that depends on where you are right now in your career. For me, I'm at a point where a lot of the times diving deep into the specific executables of marketing doesn't serve my job function anymore because I have team members who will do that, right? Strategically, it doesn't serve me anymore because my company is paying me to do a different role than that. Ultimately, my passion is still human behavior, right? It's still what makes people make the decisions that they do. So I'm looking at continuing to learn about that from a leadership perspective and also from a marketing perspective, because psychology it doesn't change whether you're, talking to your team or you're talking to the industry. And so, for me, I fully believe that what you dive into and what you should be looking at learning at a granular level depends on the mix of passion and where you are in your current role and where you want to be. If I wanted to stay as VP of marketing right now, I would still be diving into human behavior. I would still be diving into leadership. I would still be diving into, listen, AI is all around us. We have to continue to learn about that and how it infiltrates our lives. But if I want to move into a CMO position, if I want to change and I want to move into a CRO position, if I want to move into a VP of business development position, what do I need to dive into at a granular level to learn. So for me, I really think that it has to do with where you're going, where you are,
Yeah.
and what your passion is. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to retain it anyway.
I love that answer. You're right. Interests play such a thing in that. And I'm going to assume by your answer that we'll expect you to be the CEO of Atlas IED sometime in the future. So everybody write that down. We look forward to that day. That'd be awesome. All right. Britt.
Oh yeah, I'm in the middle. Hey.
We have to cycle it some other way, or that's how it's going to work.
No, I like middle. Anyway, I was really thinking of reiterating what Gina said when you posed the question. So when you asked like how do you know what you want to learn deeply, my mind kind of went to like what guiding questions can you ask yourself? So, what are you supposed to be doing? Like you have a job description. So on that piece of paper, what does it say your job is? What are you supposed to do? And then what do you want to be doing? So is there a next step to your career that you want to be pursuing and kind of finding that alignment and setting yourself up for the future? And then there's also what would make you happy to do. So like not everything is about work and what you do in your 9 to 5 or whatever your hours happen to be. So like you might want to learn something deeply that has nothing to do with your day job, and that learning is still completely worth learning. Like in higher ed, we talk about learning for learning's sake,
Yeah.
but I think that we like forget that in our personal lives, and we feel like, everything I learn, it has to have a purpose, and I have like. Gina painted a beautiful octopus behind her. And, like you can go and learn to paint something and it can just be for the joy of it.
Yeah. You're right. How much we talk about in higher ed, the priority now of teaching people how to learn, learning how to learn, and how many times I can say that in a meeting and how little I actually pay attention to it for us or for my own team. Right. So yeah, I love that. I love that. Tim.
Well, geez, this is what happens when you go last. It's like you get some amazing points made by both Gina and Britt. Yeah, and that's what it is. And I will say though, in my world right now, from my experience, every 6 months or so, something changes and there's something else. Not talking about the neurodivergence that I have, that I might get hyper focused on something and I'll lose a day because I went in that deep dive and I sunk into that. That's separate. Although it's still very much important, at least for me, because otherwise I need to process in that way. But I know that about myself, and I know that about how I need to learn and how I need to move forward with things. I am also at the point in my career, like it was already previously stated, that I need to be looking at that next level of things, which is why I'm going for my MBA. I know that thank you. I'm going for organizational leadership. I know that the next step for my career in higher ed is going to lead me into those leadership roles that I need to understand how things run and exactly what Gina said, how people work, like, and understanding people. But at the same time, I still need to be on top of the latest technologies and what's happening. So I've got a twofold piece that's going on here. I also, just from my own experience, I know I need to be in a classroom. Like I need to be accountable in that way. And so I am very fortunate that I'm taking a night class, and I have an amazing instructor. And some of the guidance I would give to those who are looking to do that: just know yourself. Take a look inside yourself first and know how you best operate, and look for those opportunities that will get you to those goals successfully. Because I've tried to do asynchronous classes that with posts and things like that. It just that doesn't work for me. It doesn't schedule well. So yeah,
it was funny. My response was gonna be like how much self-awareness you were showing that answer, and then you actually said that actual thing, which I love. There's a radical acceptance of self that says, I would love to learn this way, but that's not my way.
Right.
And you brought up sort of that like obsessive, neurodivergent of obsession, and I know that's got to be something that rings with a lot of the audience because a lot of us end up here. We've self-selected into this because of some of that.
Right.
So one follow up on that, which would be, how do you sometimes when that happens to me, I will look back on it and be like, I wasted time on something to go now. All right. I deep dove into something and that was fruitful when I did it, but now here's all the things I didn't do with that time. And now it feels like a waste. How do you combat that? How have you learned to process and accept that idea of, the obsessive deep dive?
So it's an ongoing struggle. Like so it's a continual improvement processing. I, I don't know if there's really ever a point where I've fully gotten over it. It's like, yeah, you kind of have to. I'm trying to think of how best to. You have to almost accept it. It's like, okay, I did this deep dive. It was good. I did it for XYZ reasons. And oh, there you go. You could have just chimed in with that, Britt.
You are allowed to,
You can, go ahead, Britt. Tell them what they just in case they missed it in the chat.
Oh no, you said it's impossible to waste time. You're just doing what you're doing, and that is that on that.
Exactly. So yes, there might be a moment where it's like, oh yeah, I probably should have been doing this other thing, but it's like I have to look at the flip side and be like, okay, yes, I learned this skill, I did this thing, it got fully done, and now I can move on to the next thing. So
nice.
And maybe that's a superpower, right? I mean, I know myself included, I sit there and I'm like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And this whole myth of multitasking. And you never, I mean, going back to like that master of something, Jack, something, I don't know what it's called.
Jack of all trades,
master of none.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. But multitasking is very similar to that, right? You never actually get to that 100%. You never actually finish something in the time that you anticipate finishing it, because there's always this other thing that you're working on. And yes, anybody who has kids understands the value of multitasking in certain aspects of your life. However, sometimes being focused and sometimes being obsessively focused is a superpower, because you actually get to a resolution in a finite amount of time.
Yeah, it's impossible to get to your 10,000 hours mastery of something if you're spreading it across so many things.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Tim needs a cape.
Yeah, easy there. It's not quite cape level, but yeah, because so there is the darker flip side of that. So there is the hyper focused piece, but then there's also the overwhelming freeze where there's so many things, you do none of them.
Yeah.
So that's the other trap. And it's easier for some to get out of than others. And I'm one of those that, like, if I drop into that, it's hard to break that. Because it's sitting on the sofa, doom scrolling for hours. And, so it's a very complicated, web there that you have to navigate, so.
For sure. Yeah. I think we could do a lot on those very topics for people in this audience. You know what I'm saying?
We could. Yeah.
That sounds perfect. Okay. Before we close out this first half hour, the tag of the theme for this month, there's always kind of the concept and then a challenge. And the challenge is tackle a challenge outside of your comfort zone. So the question is, what for each of you, what's a challenge you've been avoiding because maybe it's outside your comfort zone? And what would be a way to just start it? What would be something that might get you over the hump to tackle, to jump on something that feels maybe uncomfortable? And if that is answering this question, you can say that as the answer to that.
Wow, that's such a tough one. I think that there's a lot of challenges that I put off because it's an insecurity issue. It's a,
Mm-hmm.
even if I do deep dive into this, even if I do try to, you know, jump over this hurdle, am I going to be good enough? What am I going to learn about myself? Right.
Ooh, yeah.
And I think that fear is really, I don't know, it's frightening.
Yeah,
Fear. But really, I think that's a really difficult question.
as I say, imposter syndrome is a real thing, you know. And yeah, I think going, and I'll go back to my MBA because that's like my most recent like educational, uh, professional challenge that I've been. And that first class in the middle of January, getting into that classroom for the first time because I hadn't been in a classroom in 12 years. It's been 12 years since I finished
I
my
mean, as a
undergrad.
student.
As a student, yes, as a student.
Not there to fix the projector.
I'm on the other side. I'm actually there in a seat, you know. So yes, the first time I've set foot in a classroom that I'm the student in 12 years. Of that, I'm in a classroom with 23, 24-year-olds, you know, and also there are older professionals that are there in my class as well. But it's one of those, can I keep up? Can I do the work? Is my information going to be valuable? And as I've gone through those weeks, and now we're in week 6 now. Yeah, 6. And I've gotten to be more comfortable with that. But that unknown, Gina, like you talked, that was like, why am I here? And that's why it also took me 12 years to get to this point.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's like I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And yeah.
And you mentioned before, like the needing to learn to be in the classroom, that sort of thing has an external framework, right? So you don't have to just make yourself get to the first day of class. All you have to do is register for the class. And now there's an external sort of accountability thing that is making you take the next step. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Britt?
For me, it's actually like an outside of work challenge, but you can relate it to things you experience in work. So, after my son was born, something kind of clicked in my head of like, there needs to be a plan, right? And so I went online and I got a knock box. It's NOK and it stands for next of kin. So it's a way to organize all of your important documents in case, God forbid, something happens to you. Your next of kin is able to carry on. They know where things are. They know what they're supposed to do. And I bought the box, put it together, and put it in the basement, and was like, "I'll put stuff in it someday." You know, like that's
Actual box. It's a
an
physical
actual
box.
with actual folders with instructions for each folder. Like it really was.
Tells
It's
you
like
what, yeah.
this is not an ad, but like it's a really nice product. And so like yeah, I assembled it. I put all the folders with the instructions, and I was like, because what's behind that is I have to admit that someday something will happen to me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a reason we avoid documentation at work that we won't admit. Is like, if I take this out of my brain and put it on paper for someone else, I am admitting that someday, for whatever reason, I won't be in this role anymore.
Yeah,
And for
right.
some of us, that's just like a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, or I'm making it easier for them to not need me, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
putting
Job
some of my
security.
significance
God.
away.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one, and an interesting. Yeah, we have a file called "In Case of Death," and it's a very kind of grim thing, but it brings a sort of a feeling or knowledge of taking care of people. So yeah,
Yeah. The first time I did a will, I was terrified. I'm like, and you dive deep, right? I'm like, well, if I die, then it's likely that my sister's going to die because we're twins, and so I can't assign my sister to take care of my son, and you start like, and then I'm like, my brother is less mature than my son, so I'm not giving him to my brother, and like there's this whole thing that you start thinking. It is that's a really really intense process.
yeah. But I love the parallel to documentation of things because sometimes too, if you've like, there's a thing, and I know how the whole thing works, but if I really put down on paper to somebody else how it works, does it maybe not work as well as I think it does? Does it put a level of vision and scrutiny on it that like that, you know, maybe I'm not really ready for? So that's interesting.
Yeah, that
Good point.
yeah, that brain dump that I did before I left New Brunswick and went to Newark was probably the most chaotic but yet eye-opening project I did, because there's 10 years of knowledge that needed to be put down, and also unfortunately because of the staffing tragedies that we were having to deal with on top of me leaving, there was a lot of knowledge that was potentially going to be gone.
Yeah.
So, and that's probably the best way I could explain it for those who know, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But to see it all on paper, first off, I was like, wow, that's chaos in written form. But then to say, okay, this is 10 years of, of my experience here in New Brunswick that I need to make sure that goes on. So there was that, like you were saying, that level of finality, and looking to see, okay, yeah, this is now it's for someone else to take care of.
Nice. Well, let's you never know where conversations are going to go, and I love in the chat we got some advice to start a trust, we've looked into that. Like, you never know where your AV discussion's going to end up, and today it was all of our inevitable demise. You know what I'm saying?
You're welcome.
So I know. So let's. So if we're up for it, let's turn the page from the road to 10K to this month in Higher Ed AV, and maybe we can switch our emotional standpoint from grief to outright rage and anger. You know what I'm saying? Because nothing works better than controversy. So Aaron is going to drop in the chat links to three things, 2 articles and a video and a YouTube. And normally we would try and tackle 3 news articles. We will try and tackle 1 topic today. And it's a fun one because it sort of wormed its way through the text change in Higher Ed AV a couple of weeks ago before ISE. And there's nothing like a little, like I said, a little anger to get some attention going. So the links there are, first up is an article in AV Magazine, and I've got some summary. I'll do some quick summaries for you. So the article framed the rising AV spend across K-12 and higher ed as largely waste-driven, and a trend. Sorry, I can't even read. So I apologize for that. That's how this goes. And because it's live now, I can't cut that part out. Chasing and decision makers who lack technical understanding, implying institutions are buying shiny tools divorced from real teaching needs. It offered some points about training and cross-department alignment, but the tone landed as kind of condescending towards higher ed AV professionals, and flattening what we have as complex governance, accessibility, and security and life cycle realities into kind of a simplistic story, it seemed. And this article got picked up by one of my favorite shows, outside of course my own, and all the quality ones you find at higheradav.com, which is AV Week with Tim Albright. And I have a short clip to show you in terms of the beginning of how this was addressed on that show.
You're not sharing audio.
Yeah.
I didn't share audio? Gosh,
no.
Darn it. Who is in charge of technology around here? Oh,
you don't have Chris Kelly producing for you today, Ryan. You're
that's
on your own.
True.
Be there, Ryan.
I mean, that's literally why you need somebody to have that. Let's try that again.
They were looking for views.
Classroom that was older than but Gina, yeah, I mean, how do we have these conversations with higher ed? How do we have it with corporate?
You have it now, right?
Who, in some cases, could certainly be frustrated because they're spending the money and they're spending the time and the effort. There's not adoption or there's not standardization. You know, how do we help them through this path?
Yeah. So first of all, Tim, I felt this was really clickbaity. They were looking for views, right? I also think, to be fair, I love Mason Technologies. They are a great group. This article did nothing for Mason Technologies. In fact, what it showed was a true disconnect between their customers and themselves. I think that any higher ed individual
for
Gina,
pity's sake.
that choose not to use been going on. This is clearly a dated perspective from a higher ed standpoint. And again, not doing anything for Mason Technologies.
I'll pause it. Of course, I fast forwarded by accident in the middle of the clip. But yeah, I love the comment. This is meta Gina watching Gina on another show. So now we're going to try and get Gina on another show where we watch this clip of the other clip, which I think would be good. But I would encourage everybody to pull up that episode, because there was kind of a little discussion amongst the folks on that show about kind of this article, the merits and non-merits of it. And then the HETMA board of directors wrote an op-ed and sent it back to AV Nation. That is the third one linked there. They responded in an op-ed that pushed back against the idea that higher education is wasting money on AV, arguing that the framing is dismissive. It ignores how decisions actually happen. They emphasize that higher ed AV purchasing is shaped by governance, accessibility, security requirements, formal procurement processes, and life cycle planning, not trend chasing. They also pointed to HETMA programs and credentialing as evidence that the field is actively improving training, standards, and outcomes. While acknowledging oversimplification can happen, they argued that institutions are standardizing at scale, not talking down to practitioners, and that it showed a lack of respect for the reality in higher ed. So I will start with, if you go back in and watch the full episode there, what came across immediately was three guests who immediately clapped back, and one that actually pointed to HETMA as a reason that decision making in higher ed is not being driven by trends, and that there's not necessarily a lack of training, and that in fact there are those of us working hard to make sure that schools have the ability to have the training and resources they can to make the right decisions. And in fact, the HETMA response to it literally points out of, the feeling in the AV industry of the higher ed vertical kind of being talked down to sometimes as something we've taken on. So if everybody's not all mad and worked up about this, let's get there, But first off, because we put Gina on the spot on that, and I know, so first, I will say thank you for the way you immediately stood up for this community on that show. It was really heartfelt. I think I texted Joe and some other people about, like, it was one of the first it was a really tangible way of showing that perhaps the mission of HETMA has really worked, where people in the industry, when something came up about higher ed, were immediately like, no, these people are professionals. They know what they're doing. And so, all right, I'll get off my little monologue and turn it over to you. But
I was going to say, Ryan, you did exactly what I was going to do, because if you didn't do it, I was going to do it, because I love the fact that we have champions like Gina, Michelle Lorette, and Brock McGinnis that are there to defend us when we're not at the table. And it's because of folks like them that we're successful at what we do and why we are where we are today. So Thank you, Gina, and thank you to all the rest that stood up for us in that moment. You had every right to be pissed, and I agree.
Yeah, I love it. So now it's been a few weeks, Gina, so thank you for taking time to be here with us again today. Is there anything about the discussion, as you've seen sort of the response and the things back and forth, that any secondary, tertiary thoughts that have come up regarding sort of either the original article, the reaction to it, or higher ed's reaction to it? And keep in mind, we can take it. You can tell us the truth.
Well, first I want to say I apologize to anybody who watched that episode. I did not intend to raise my voice. That was unprofessional and not right, and I got heated, and I apologize for that. I also didn't use bad words, which is very, very, I'm proud of myself for that one. It was infuriating.
I think Mets Jets fans are allowed to use bad words, I think, anytime they want to. So.
Oh my God, both of them are 4-letter words. Mets, Jets, 4-letter words. But honestly, I think the response from the higher ed community was 100% what I thought it was going to be. I felt like AV Mag also did themselves a disservice a little bit by running something like that. I thought that the correlation or the connection made between K-12 and higher ed was incorrect and showed a lack of understanding and a lack of connection. And so, unfortunately, I think that there'll be there'll be some blowback towards Mason Technologies in their ability to get jobs on higher ed campuses moving forward. And that's kind of sad because it was written by one person. And it doesn't speak for everybody in their organization. One of the things that it also did, though, was bring light to Mason Technologies, who typically is a relatively regional integrator. They don't go far beyond the Northeast, right? So now they have visibility not only in the UK where AVMag is centered, but also around the country and around the world, because this was discussed at ISE. This was discussed clearly on AV Week, and now here. So I think that what it's done is it's brought light to a conversation about disconnectedness between higher ed and some integrators. And Erin, you're absolutely right. A good integrator should be working with the personnel at the institution. And it doesn't seem like this particular person at Mason did that. I will say a couple of weeks prior, or a couple of weeks in the past, that I felt angry. Now I feel sad because I feel like it also started a conversation that is leading towards an us them mentality. And I don't like it. I hear a lot of people in higher ed saying, well, we know what we're supposed to be doing because we're an informed bunch. We're all the same industry. We're all responsible for staying at the top of our game in what we do. We're all responsible for working together, whether it's at the higher ed level or K-12 or hospitality or healthcare or integrator or consultant or architect or a specifier. It's one big, for lack of a better term, ecosystem of relationships. And to pit one against the other is now doing the industry a disservice. And so it's really making me sad to see, okay, we're putting on the boxing gloves. The line's been drawn, ding, ding, let's come out of our corners. I just don't like it.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Like I said, it's not always comfortable to be put on front and say, hey, here's a question, while they're on that show or this show, and answer it. Thank you, Gina. All right, for our other two, how does Gina not know what she's talking about? Let's really get into it.
I would never claim that Gina doesn't know what she's talking about. And I'm offended that you tried to.
I'm trying to figure out how to be a controversial clickbaity host, and it's not working.
We're not trying to do clickbait. Drives me absolutely bonkers anyhow. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a part of that.
Go ahead, Tim.
So I will say, I don't want that either, Gina. I don't want it. We've done so well as an organization and as a vertical to bridge that gap, because there was that gap that we were all considered end users, and we didn't know what we were talking about. And now, we've got the CTSs, we've got the managers, AV professionals of the year that are higher ed. Like we've shown our stuff, and here's what we know our things. So yes, I don't want to see that division happen either. So that of all the things, yes, I got upset by this too. I saw this. I was happy to see the video. And I'm a miss. Also, Tim Albright knew that this needed to be brought to light. So I know. So thank you to Tim as well, also a champion of higher ed, and I don't want that to go missed. I will give the author one line. It was at the very bottom, and it was: the future of instructional technology is not about buying more. It is about buying intentionally. That is 100% correct. It's like, yes, I know I'm one of them. Like, a lot of our universities don't have university-wide standards. And yes, things get purchased that shouldn't get purchased. There are things, and it literally just happened yesterday. Yes, yesterday morning, I got a ticket from one of the departments saying, "Hey, I bought this Bose soundbar. We want to install it in your classroom." No, it's like, that's not it. Is like, you can't just go buy an piece of equipment and put in one of our classrooms. Like so there's a disconnect, and I've now, within 24 hours, we've patched it up and we've made the correction where purchasing of AV equipment will always get checked. It managed to get snuck through the cracks, whatever somebody ordered it from B&H or whatever it is through our marketplace, and it got missed. So we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen again. But yes, so there might be a small piece that we're wasting money, but I don't think that's a standard across the entire higher ed vertical.
And I mean, wasting money is all in perspective, right? Some people might say your sandboxes are a waste of money, but your sandboxes are a way for you to test out new equipment, to work through instructional design, to get champions on board. And sometimes they fail and sometimes they succeed, but that's the whole point, right? So I think that, talking about it from that perspective is, I don't.
And I'm going to say,
over here. I'm sorry.
I'm going to save my comments about testing and all that for product until the 4:00 panel that I'm on. So I'm going to save that for later. I don't want to take away from the. So if you want to hear more about that, come back at 4 p.m. today, Eastern time. Yeah, so we need to do a better job of universal standards, working with the VIXA and those sort of standards organizations to make sure that we, as a whole, do it. And also, yeah, I didn't like that he lumped K through 12 into higher ed either. Like that, you have not seen like the classrooms that my son has in his school. They're very beautiful, clean classrooms. The technology is older and there's no money for that sort of stuff. So they're not wasting money because they don't have the money to do the things. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop there before I start getting too far too.
All right, Britt, throw us a hot take.
Okay, so my hot take is, to be clear, my opinion and my speculation, because I don't know the person who wrote this article or anything about them. But I had the question of, if we look, and we've talked about this, if we look at the technology industry as a whole, we see that it's male dominated. If we look at the education industry as a whole, we see that it's actually female dominated. And now that starts to break down as you go to higher administrative levels, unfortunately. But by and large, we have like male and female industries. And so for this person to say that the female dominated industry is wasting money on technology, that's what struck a chord with me. And, I don't think that that was necessarily an outward purposeful bias, right? Like bias can be just there, you don't realize it, right? And so I've kind of been sitting with that and questioning that, and I haven't heard anyone talk about that piece of it yet. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I think and I'll put it this way. We talk about the AV industry a lot of times as a family, and families fight, but families also have to recognize, and look, there has been a lot of advancement of sort of the purchasing channels, really twofold, being pulled into the industry as a whole as true partners. And also we've tried to acknowledge like our responsibility in the success of the AV industry as a whole, right? We are not just the consumers from manufacturers who are there to, for us to buy from. We need great technology being developed to bring to bear for our students on our campuses, just as much as manufacturers need our public dollars and private dollars to buy them. So from that perspective, and including the perspective that, the industry continues to be male dominated and more male dominated than it was before COVID, mixing into a world. And that idea that, we identify, I love that, as higher ed and AV, higher ed and technology in a way. What is our channels, our verticals responsibility to the industry as a whole? Are we meeting it or are we not meeting it? I loved it. That's good. See, the fun part is when
Yeah.
you edit a podcast, that silence goes away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the first person just jumps in. And when you do it live, you know what I'm saying? People don't see it.
I obviously every segment of the industry could be asked the same question. I think that we all have multiple responsibilities. One is to design systems and solutions that affect the humanity, right? I mean, whether that is through education or whether that is through an experience in a hotel lobby, whether that is an interactive exhibit at a museum, whether it's, at a sporting event. Part of our job is to make sure that we're affecting the experience of humanity. The other is dependent on your role within the industry. So from your standpoint and from mine, I would say that your responsibility is to give me feedback on the challenges that you see and the trends that you're seeing, where your struggles are, so that I can help create solutions with you that will allow you to meet those demands, to to identify those trends, to advance those trends in a way that ultimately will affect and engage with humanity. It definitely depends on where you are, but ultimately, I would say there's a feedback loop at every single level and within every single segment that has to be fulfilled as part of our shared responsibility, and that's from your mouth to my ears, from my mouth to our engineers, from our engineers to our specifiers and integrators, and it all has to keep on working like that. And at the moment somebody says, well, it's not my job to tell you what to make, that's when things start falling apart. It's not my job to tell you what the trends are. Well, that's when things start falling apart, because then we lose that entire feedback loop, and then we lose the connection of the industry, which is what this industry was built on, was connection, right?
I was gonna say you and I've preached this ever since we even started the approved program. Thank you, Donovan. That is like you knew it. That's part of the manufacturers that listen to us, or even to the outside feedback. I'm not even going to just put this in a higher ed, because there are folks that know what they're talking about out there, aside from just us. Yeah, and the advisory boards as well. The manufacturers that are successful listen, and they listen honestly. And it also goes back to us too. It's like, maybe we're not using it in the appropriate way. Maybe we're not we're thinking too big, which maybe, Joe would probably argue with me on that. It's like, there's no such thing as thinking too big. But maybe we're exceeding that. But that's where, like you were saying, Gina, that feedback loop that we got to keep coming back around. And I think back to, this is total, like, I'm trying to make a comparison, so bear with me. The show Parks and Recreation, there was a time when Pawnee was merging with Eagleton, and Amy Fowler's character goes to a conference with other municipal people, and they're talking about the merger, and she's like, oh, I got a system, it's going to take 5 years or whatever, or it's going to happen in like 2 years. And like all these other towns are saying, oh, it takes 15 years, 20 years. I'm like, yeah, we're looking, and we're in a similar kind of vein here. We're not looking to merge, but we're looking to have the same kind of view to everybody, and to have that feedback be consistent. It's going to take time. It's like, we've done great as HETMA in 7 years that we've been doing this, but it's just 7 years. Like, we're just small into that world. I could see there's been great change, but there's still great change that's coming. So yeah, let's have this conversation again in 8 more years. Yeah, there you go, Joe. 7 years on March 12th. And let's have this conversation again in another 7 years and see where we are at that point. I guarantee in 7 years, we're going to be in a totally different world for how higher ed is looked upon in this whole feedback organization, and how much more respected we are going to be at that point where articles like this will not be a thing. This is an outlier, I think. So, yeah.
I love
That's
the
it for me.
optimism that higher ed's still going to be around in 7 years. So that's great. I'm glad.
Well, you should have listened to the episode of the AV Life. We were looking down the
Yeah.
road, so we already looked at what it's going to be in 15 years from now. So
I mean, you plugged your show, you plugged your session. I don't know. I'm just kidding. There you go.
okay, I can stop talking, right? I've done
Yeah, no,
everything.
you're good. All right, Britt.
I definitely agree that, our responsibility is to communicate and build community. I also would add that we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves when we need to, because sometimes in these conversations, I see almost a bitterness. And I think that comes from a lot of like frustration over the years and feeling siloed and lacking budget. Like you throw a dart and hit a challenge that we've experienced over and over and over again, right? So when you need to, not to sound flippant and tell you to go touch grass, but like when you need to
Mm-hmm.
go somewhere that is not your office and ground yourself because you need to give yourself that space to re-enter invigorated. No one in our community is served by your burnout.
Nice. Yeah, I think there are a lot of us in higher ed that, and it's very different right now based on geography, types of institutions, where their funding comes from, that there are institutions that are under siege a little bit, and AV departments that are under siege within their department, within their colleges. So I think part of that, what, not to pull another word out, but triggering, we've almost felt like, okay, now this came along. Now we're under siege from our industry side that felt like our refuge, and that idea that in the long run, we could talk about these things and then we can come back together as a family for the greater good of, to Gina's point, of affecting the humans that we're here to affect, and get back to that why we've all chosen to do this as a profession in the first place. So I appreciate, thank you so much all for sharing your thoughts on both of these segments today, and giving some wisdom and being up for diving into things that are sometimes a little more awkward to talk about. So before we close out, we can assume that everybody here listening knows who you are and where to find you, but usually that's not the case. So Britt, if people wanted to get connected with you, find you, and keep up with what you're up to, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think the most active place for me right now is LinkedIn, so you can find me under Britt Yenser CTS.
Thank you so much. Tim?
Well, yeah, you can find me on all
I'm
the
sorry, he's already
socials.
done his
Yeah.
plugs. We don't need
Well,
to. I'm just kidding. Go
you
ahead,
know
Tim.
where to find, the AV Life, higheredav.com. You can find me at T Van Wert on the X, or as formerly known as Twitter. And Tim Van Wert CTS on LinkedIn.
Good deal. And Gina?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably my most active platform, or Instagram, Gina Sansevero, or Instagram, where you'll see food and puppies. And kind of to Britt's point, if you need to take a break, come look at food and puppies.
Yeah.
It's a great little account. So
Cool. Thank you.
and the beach, occasionally the beach.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And then, I would say, don't forget to connect with all these people on the HETMA community. There's a lot of robust communication tools in there. Look for the committees that they're involved in. That's great. As always, not as always, but as sometimes, my name is Ryan Gray. I've been your host today. You can find me in the HETMA community. And as always, I would encourage everybody to bookmark higheredav.com. Check it every day for new content. We had the latest count in the fourth quarter of last year. We had 90 original pieces of content go up in the last quarter, basically hitting that something new every day mark. And that has actually accelerated in the new year. So kind of that hub, that voice of higher ed AV, and a place the industry can keep up on what's going on. Bookmark higheredav.com. Check it every day. And for now, that is all the time we have for HETMA Presents.